Hello, Rick. How are you today?
I'm great, John. Great to be here.
Great. I'm glad you're here. So we're going to talk about a pretty interesting movie. It's one of the few Western film noirs, and
Really?
yes, with the director Anthony Mann and the storyline of revenge and pursuit. It's generally considered a one of the top Western noirs.
Interesting.
So yeah, that
I
brings
hadn't
up.
thought of it that way. That's great.
It was I took a class many years ago, and they brought this movie up in the class, and the discussion was whether Shelley Winters was a femme fatale or not. And generally, it's thought that she's not.
That would be my thought.
Yeah, I was reading some of the comments, and she said it didn't. She didn't care for this movie too much because, she was saying, well, you got this beautiful woman here, and all these guys are running around just chasing after some stupid gun and ignoring her. So
I don't think they were ignoring her, but it's true she didn't have much to do.
no, she wasn't much of the focus in this one, but
And
she
I
did a
think
good job.
it's kind of funny how in the end it looks like she and the hero have a real close relationship when in truth they've sort of barely bounced off one another over the course of the movie. It's a little
Right.
strange that way.
Yeah, they just stuck that together pretty good.
But she was
Um,
good. I thought she was good in the role.
yeah, yeah, she was good, and it's just strange to see her so young.
Yeah.
After the Poseidon adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm chewing on a little cough drop here, so if I'm clicking a little bit, that's why.
Okay.
So this movie, Jimmy Stewart was trying to make himself known as a solid hero, as a solid actor, and not just a guy that could play Harvey and was the guy from It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, he was, as I understand it, he was looking to sort of broaden the audience's understanding of him as an actor to give him more hard-boiled roles, and this was a hard-boiled role, that's for sure.
It sure was. He did a solid in it.
This was no Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith goes to Washington,
Yeah.
or Harvey the Rabbit, or not Harry Potter, George Potter.
Yeah.
Any of those.
Actually, I think Harvey came out after this movie.
I think he did too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he could still do the soft ones, but he went on to play kind of the opposite of this in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He went back to not being a tough guy again.
Yeah, he was more Mr. Smith in that one, but which is kind of a goofy movie because I think he was about 56 playing the young pilgrim.
He was a little long in the tooth for that role.
By the end of the movie, you could believe him, but man, early on, I thought this is a pretty old dude here rolling into the West.
Just got out of law school. It took him. I guess it took him 30 or 40 years to get there.
It seems that way.
So,
I love that movie too. By the way, that's the more I see it, the more I appreciate it.
What's the guy's name from DOA? I can't even pull the fellow's name up. No, not Lee Marvin, the newspaper editor.
Oh, Edmund O'Brien?
Edmund O'Brien. I think this, one of his better roles in that movie.
Yes. Yeah.
He's really solid.
Yeah.
And, I got some notes here I'm trying to look at. This movie is kind of set, that's just the Battle of, it's called the Battle of Little Bighorn now. Used to be called Custer's Battlefield.
Right.
It took place in the end of June 25th of 1876. And this movie's set on 4th of July the same year.
Uh-huh.
Kind of, that's when the gun contest is.
Right.
And it begins. So when they get to that town, Wyatt Earp is throwing, which is Will Geer, Grandpa from the Waltons, is throwing Shelley Winters out of town for being a saloon girl.
Right.
And Will Geer said that he thought he was way too old for that role at 48.
Yeah, I think
And
Wyatt Earp was about 28 at that point.
Yeah, he was a young guy.
Dodge
And
City.
yeah, and so that was kind of interesting. So they made it. They made a few kind of historical inaccuracies about the battle and stuff. I guess we can get into later. But so they go to this town for this shoot off for this 1 of 1,000 Winchester 73 rifle, which was not the first repeating rifle, because the Union had Spencers. I worked at Chickamauga, and the one Union brigade held off the Confederate Army with Spencer repeating rifles at Chickamauga, and that was 1864. But the Army had decided to go for with a single shot rifle to arm its troops, which was a kind of a single shot Spencer. And I know as late as World War II, commanders didn't want to have automatic weapons because they thought soldiers would waste ammunition if they didn't have to just aim and shoot each time. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. But they say that Jimmy Stewart says that later in the battle that they used that single shot. The Indians used the single shot, and then they would rush in while they were reloading. But I interviewed Doug Scott on my website for podcast, the guy that did the Little Bighorn metal detecting survey, the archaeologist. And it wasn't really that. It was that the inexperienced troops collapsed and clustered in on themselves, and they lost kind of tactical cohesion. And he followed they claim that the Indians were heavily armed in this movie, that the Indians were heavily armed with repeating rifles. But what Doug found out is he would find a rifle, because he was doing ejector marks and primer marks, and he would find a rifle that was on the top of the hill fighting, and then suddenly it would be in the other hands attacking up the hill. So as they were killing off people, they were picking up their weapons and continuing on.
Yeah.
So,
well, what do you think? I remember reading one quote when I was looking into the Spencer or into the Winchester 73, talking about repeating rifles, where the Confederate soldiers said these Yankees had rifles that they'd load in the morning and they'd shoot all day.
That must have been quite a shock, because I mean, I know in a musket, in a rifle musket, I mean, not a rifle musket, but a regular colonial musket, you could fire 3 shots in a minute. But I think that a Civil War musket is a little harder to load because of the mini ball. So that must have been quite a surprise when you're expecting.
Yeah, I would think so.
And they keep shooting at you. So what do you think of this brother against brother, which they don't reveal until the very end of the story?
Well, it's interesting. It explains although they don't go very deeply into it, but basically they say one son was good and one son was bad from the first day, and I think you can totally understand why the good brother would see his one goal in life to be to track down and kill the bad brother after the bad brother kills the father. So
right, kind of a Cain and Abel
thing. Powerful
thing.
Motivation.
Yeah, and the gun is just kind of a MacGuffin. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
They're running through it, but the gun leads the story. It's kind of like that. What was the golden Rolls Royce or something, or the silver Rolls Royce movie where they tracked a car like that as it changed hands and became part of it has Shirley MacLaine in it, and it goes and it belongs to rich people, and then it gets involved in the Spanish Civil War, and it ends up with the partisans and all that.
I think I missed that one.
It's not bad, it's not too bad. But I like that. And so they come to the town, and the guys are, Sheriff Will Geer or Wyatt Earp is collecting weapons and just throwing them in there, with well, maybe you could figure out which one is yours when you come back, right?
Good luck.
Yeah, that would have been quite an inventory system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
so,
Will Gear was good too. I mean, all the performances I thought were really good. And when I realized it was Will Gear, I thought, man, this is fun seeing this guy in this role because he's definitely too old, but he does the role well.
yeah, he was a good actor, right? He goes all the way back to what's the first theater, the the theater project in New York. It's not Mercury Theater, but it's one of the WPA theaters that
Ah,
later all the blacklisting and communists came out of.
yeah,
I forgot the name of it, but
that figures.
yeah, he goes back to that. So he's a great actor, you
Yeah,
know.
I
To
loved
see,
him in Jeremiah Johnson.
oh yeah, as the old prospector that teaches the young guy
Yeah,
how to do it, Grizz. So the gun contest that I think that Jimmy Stewart apparently worked a lot, worked until his hands were raw on practicing the shot. But it kind of bothered me where they would snap it into position, and
yes.
do the. I was like, you're not going to hit anything like that.
I don't know much about guns, and I don't shoot guns, and although I think I'd like to, and out here in Arizona, guns
Yeah,
are big. But I thought the same thing because there was that both those guys, their dad must have taught them that. They would
yeah,
snap that gun up, and I didn't understand the relevance. It seemed to me that it was not the way to do things to just snap it up like that.
right, right. Because you have a good, better chance of missing that way,
Yeah,
And so I thought that was it. It looked cool. It looked really cool.
yeah,
So it worked in the movie, but I don't know why they did it. And the shooting through the stamp, shooting through the washer,
yeah.
hitting the stamp. If you could make a shot like that, you know.
I kind of assumed it wasn't stated that way. It it was everybody assumed that both those guys had missed the first washer shot. I
Right.
assumed both of them shot right through the center of that washer because if you look at their patterns on the targets, their patterns were almost identical,
Identical shooter.
taught to shoot by the same guy, the dad, and so I kind of assumed that the dumb move was for the bad brother to agree to that bet.
To let him have it.
If the good guy hits the washer, he wins, and the other guy doesn't even get a chance to shoot. Seemed to
Yeah,
be a
that was a
bad
kind
bet.
of bad guys. They're not known for making rational
That's
decisions.
true.
Yeah, that's why the prisons are full of them.
Mm,
so, so he wins the gun and he has the little first brush with what's her name? Um, Shelley Winters is Lola Manners,
right.
which is a great name, by the way.
Yeah.
So he has his first brush with her. He almost comes into conflict with Wyatt Earp until he finds out who he is.
Yeah.
And she talks about how Steven would stand up, and we find out a little bit about that later.
Yeah.
And so he wins this rifle that's supposed to be one of 1,000, and I think there were like 183 of those ever made. The one of 1,000 model. There
Yeah,
were,
that's interesting. I did a little research on that, probably the same as you,
yeah,
that those particular rifles were made from barrels that had unusually close clusters in test shooting. So they were
yeah,
actually by by manufacture, they were better than the typical off the line Winchester in terms of accuracy, which
right,
I thought was pretty interesting.
yeah. And they sold. I mean, they sold like 700,000, 900,000 of those rifles out west,
Yeah,
and they
I think the number I saw, oh yeah, 720,000
yeah,
up
that's a
until
lot.
1923.
That's a lot of rifles.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they have 4440, so it would fit in the pistol too, and you'd only have to carry one kind of ammunition. That's
yeah,
some good American marketing right there.
yeah.
Make it easy, make it assembly line, and make it efficient.
The if you read any of the Louis L'Amour westerns, and I during COVID I discovered Louis L'Amour. I read his memoir.
Huh,
Uh, I forget the name of something of The Education of a Wandering Man. So I started reading his books, hadn't read them, although I had seen several movies that had been made from his
Yeah.
books, like Hondo. Well, he wrote 100 novels, and I believe I've read all of them now, and some of them I've
Wow.
read twice because they're so much fun to read. They're like a good Western in book form. But the books, that Winchester rifle is all over the West. It seems like in the latter half of the 19th century or the latter third of the 19th century, if you were out West, you had a 6-gun and a Winchester.
Winchester.
And that's
Well,
it, man. You didn't go anywhere without your Winchester.
it makes perfect sense, you know.
Yeah.
They go and they were pretty. They kind of hit that theme in this movie. Don't go without your rifle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
so Jimmy Stewart wins it, and before he can get his name engraved on it, his brother, who we don't know is his brother, played by Stephen McNally, and his friends jump him and steal the rifle and head and light out. And so I was thinking of High Spade. So Jimmy Stewart, which is Lynn, and High Spade, which is Millard Mitchell. It's a great actor. They head out after him, and because it's supposed to be right after Little Bighorn, the tribes are on the rampage, and the Dutch Henry, which is Jimmy Stewart's Dutch Henry Brown, ends up in, I guess, Riker's bar or cantina.
Yeah.
And there's a gun dealer there, played by an Indian seller of guns to Indians, played by John McIntyre.
Yeah.
And what was my point? That I want to get John McIntyre, and then he's trying to buy. They've lost their guns because they've been
They
turned into the
had
sheriff.
they had to run out of Dodge so fast they didn't have time to go get all their guns from Wyatt's office.
Completely unarmed.
Exactly.
So he plays McNally tries to play, or Dutch Henry tries to play a poker game against what is that guy's name? Joe Lamont.
McIntyre. Yeah.
Yeah, McIntyre. He tries to play a poker game against him. Did you get the feeling that he was being set up and
Oh yeah,
I'm just a simple old gun dealer? And
yeah. I don't know. You wonder again. You wonder at the intelligence of that simple old gun dealer, because there he sits all by himself. These 3 guys come in that need guns, and he wants that rifle, and I think he cheats at cards. And he winds up with everything, and he also winds up dead.
Right. He gets his later.
Why couldn't he see that coming? Things are
It's
not
just
really in his favor here in terms of the odds.
no, because I'm pretty sure, that once the guy's got the pistols, even if the bartender got the drawdown on them, they could still wait around and get that rifle back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the mistakes he made. I think he has a McNally, or Dutch Henry, has a full house, aces and eights. And he says, "Oh, I almost got a dead man's hand," which is a pair of aces and a pair of eights from Wild Bill Hickok when he was shot. But Hickok wasn't shot until August 2nd, 1876. So he still had another month or so to go. They kind of jumped that one on there.
Yeah, the script supervisor should have caught the continuity error there.
The aces and eights. I guess I'd always, for a long time, I assumed when you got aces and eights, you had a full house instead of 2 pairs. I guess they would have announced it as a full house that way.
Yes.
But it always confused me. I thought, oh, aces and eights, he's got 3 of one and 2 of the other. But so the dead man's hand from Hickok, and then Joe Lamont, the gun dealer, goes out to meet with the Indian chief. And did you notice who he was?
Oh yeah, Rock Hudson.
I didn't even see it. I read it in the credits after the movie, and I'm like, oh really? My God, that's Rock Hudson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was so young, I missed it. And he did a credible job as an Indian, you know?
Yeah,
He was
okay, if you can't find a real Indian.
they didn't try back in those days. They
It wasn't like he had a lot of lines, you know?
yeah.
"This
He
gun
said
I
it
want."
yeah, this gun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've got that broken grammar thing going.
right.
Did you it said in the, on IMDb that he was first wearing a Lewis and Clark peace medal that they had given out during their, Corps of Discovery. Something like he would have inherited, but later he didn't have it on. And I thought that was an interesting little detail to put something
Well,
that was
but unless I'm mistaken, this movie took place almost entirely from a geographical point of view, was down in the Texas Panhandle, right?
right, right.
So I don't believe Lewis and Clark ever made it over there. I
No,
think
they
their
didn't go
route
that far south.
they were entirely north and west.
Right.
But and I'm even wondering why these Indians are inspired by the Sioux, who were probably 1,000 miles away. But who knows?
Yeah, I know there was a general uprising after it,
Oh,
but most of them were getting the heck out of town,
yeah.
because they knew the army was coming back after them.
Oh, yeah.
And, but, in Texas, that would have been Comanches, and they
Yeah.
were fighting at a drop of the hat anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have been negotiating for those guns.
No,
They would have been
not
taking
at
those
all.
guns.
So they, kill him, and then so the chief is ended up with the one of 1,000. He heads out, and that's when they, I think that's when they get after Lola and Steven,
Yes.
the wagon, and
Yeah.
he runs off and leaves her behind, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've known a few women, and I don't think they're gonna forgive you for that.
It looked like she was having a hard time figuring out how she was going to stay with him.
Yeah, so, I mean,
In,
that was kinda
in fact, I think that was true throughout the rest of that storyline. It looked to me like she was done with him pretty much.
pretty much, it's 'cause from the guy that was gonna stand up to Wyatt Earp if he was in town, to the guy that runs away and leaves her to the Indians. So he wasn't much of a guy.
No.
Uh, and so, Lynn and, High Spade make it make it into a cavalry camp where, Stephen and Lola have already taken, uh, refuge. They're
Hmm.
surrounded by the Indians, but that was, J.C. Flippin, which
Yeah.
is one of the John Wayne posse guys.
Yeah. And I mentioned this movie to you called The Far Country, which James Stewart made in 1954, also with Anthony Mann, the director, the same director as Winchester.
Uh-huh.
And in that movie, you've got the same gang. You've got John McIntyre playing the villain. You got J.C. Flippin playing an innocent, good-hearted character actor, and then you got James Stewart as the hero. His sidekick in that movie is Walter Brennan. It's a good
Okay.
movie. Frankly, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Winchester 73. But apparently, Anthony Mann and James Stewart made 4 westerns together, the first of which was Winchester.
Okay. Yeah, they had worked together on something else earlier, but it wasn't a
Mhm.
Western. And so that's kinda so Jimmy Stewart or Lynn in his gentle way, doesn't offend the sergeant and teaches him how to fight the Indians.
Yeah,
And, they say they don't attack at night after they've been chasing them and shooting at them as they run into camp at night, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And, so I noticed like a lot of the the myths. I saw a lot of myths that I'm familiar with from cowboy movies in this movie. And I wonder, how many times I've watched this before and didn't, just had it somewhere back there and didn't know what was going on.
I have to say though, what I've noticed, and I continue to see it as I watch these 50s westerns, you've already got the white man or the Indian or both talking about how the white man has destroyed the Indian's life. The Rock Hudson Indian says,
Uh-huh.
"You take our land, you kill our women," or something like that. And I remember John Wayne in Hondo had some line about this Indian life is over, but it was a good way of life. It's, I mean, already back in the 50s, we were
Yeah.
acknowledging the impact of European civilization overcoming Indian civilization.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, it would be almost impossible to not. I mean, streaming across a continent like that, and you imagine you being a people with no way to slow it down. You know,
Oh yeah,
if they'd all joined together on day one and shot arrows at Columbus, which I think they did in the Caribbean, but if all the tribes had united early on, they could have probably put up a defense. But as individual tribes, they never had a chance.
well, and I think that's the essence of American Indian culture, that it was so fractured. It was there were just hundreds, maybe thousands of tribes, and very little unity over the centuries.
Right.
And I mean, how does a primitive culture resist developed culture like European, especially when Europeans bring smallpox and germs that there's no natural immunity? I mean, probably a third of the Indian population killed was killed by germs, which in most cases, not in every case, the Europeans didn't even know they were bringing. You know?
Right. And that had, that had been going on for, 300 years. I mean, the Spanish brought the first diseases in to the New World
Yep.
like that and took some back too.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so you can imagine that even if they were 300 years before, even if they'd have been fairly homogenous, all the waves of death and the reduction in population is going to fracture them up. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought, and kind of on that same line about the awareness of the people about the Indians' way of life being over. I also like the way they tried to smooth the Civil War out. In many ways, like the 50s and 60s and 70s, people weren't as mad about the American Civil War as they are now. They made Lynn and High Spade Confederates that fought against the U.S. cavalry, but they didn't have any animosity. And now it
Yeah.
seems like we're past all that.
Well, and it's pretty hard, in my mind, it's pretty hard to imagine that these two guys, who I think we should assume are Texans, pretty
Yeah.
hard for me to imagine that those Texans, after the experience of Reconstruction in Texas and all the conflict of that, could be that settled and friendly with
Yeah.
a former Blue
Former
Jacket.
enemy. Well,
Yeah,
maybe they were from the west. They were out there near Amarillo. Maybe they were missing a
yeah, maybe.
lot of the stuff. Yeah, that was some bad times. I think that's when they started getting the tick disease and couldn't drive cattle out of Texas and stuff. Following the Civil War and some of that went on. So it was pretty bad
It was really bad.
economically. Yeah, just like when
There,
they just go ahead.
there's a great history of Texas by a guy named Fehrenbach. He also wrote a fantastic history of the Korean War. But his history of Texas goes into it's the history of Texas. So, but it's fascinating to read about Texas. It's such a unique place in our history. And I mean, the only state that entered the Union as an independent nation.
Right. And apparently
And
they were really economically in trouble then too, right?
yes,
It wasn't like
and Reconstruction was pretty tough on those Texans because it was pretty exploitational and brutal down
yeah,
there. Not that I'm apologizing for the Confederate loss or anything, but Texans weren't necessarily ready to kiss the feet of the Union former Union soldiers.
yeah. That's we'll get into Josie Wales later, right?
Oh yeah, wow,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
So yeah, it is. It's one of my favorites. So they used their, I guess, Stephen the Coward and Lynn and High Spade. all have repeating rifles, and they use that to beat back the Indian attack, eventually killing the chief, who drops the one of 1,000 out there.
Right.
And I was watching that scene, and I'm like, man, that soldier looks like Tony Curtis.
Yes.
And that other guy looks like Jim Best. And sure enough, it was.
Yeah.
I like Jim Best because he was in the other Jimmy Stewart with Shenandoah, which is
Yes.
a heart tugger.
Yeah.
He was the soldier that helped his son escape on the Confederate side. But yeah, so I was surprised to see those young guys in there hidden in the background.
Yeah. Well, 1950. It's pretty early for them.
Yeah, yeah. And so the Tony Curtis as a soldier finds the rifle, gives it to his sergeant, who gives it to Stephen the coward. And him and Lola head off, and Lynn and I don't know why I can't keep saying High Spade. I can't get it right. High Spade.
Yeah.
They head off, still searching for Henry Brown, Dutch Henry Brown, which was apparently the name of a real criminal, a real gang robber,
Huh.
a little further north of Texas.
Interesting.
Yeah, they took that, and so when they go to the hideout. When Dutch Henry Brown goes to the hideout, ends up meeting Dan Duryea and Steve Brody and Charles Drake, who are all film noir actors. The Bad Gang was just straight out of the film noir catalog. So I thought that was really interesting. And I guess, well, I jumped ahead, but when Steve and Lola make it to the house where they're going to build the farm, she's ready to settle down, but she's already having issues with him. And then Duryea and part of the gang show up, chased by the posse. And then the posse, what was the guy's name? Ray Teal was the marshal of the posse.
Yeah.
He's just stuck in there in the shadows. Not too much of a role for him, but he's always a good guy to have in there. So Duryea basically forces Stephen into a gunfight over the gun, and just to get the gun, he loses a man, and then he sacrifices his whole crew so he can escape and uses Lola as a shield.
Yeah.
Nice guy,
Yeah.
which is kind of role he played in all those film noirs too.
I have to tell you, in this movie, he's my favorite character.
He's
the
lively,
most interesting, and the most fun.
yeah, he is.
Because there's no two ways about it. He's just evil and having a ball being evil.
Exactly, living for the day.
But I wondered about that too, because the sheriff burns down a whole farmhouse. Now, I wonder if sheriffs, in order to get bad guys, were in the habit of burning down farmhouses.
I wondered about that too when they did that. What are they going to do? They're going to have a house raising for that family or something?
Exactly my question. How do you make up for this destruction of property?
Yeah, and maybe if you have like 9 guys, don't all stand together. Maybe surround the house.
Yeah. So the windows don't provide escape routes.
Yeah. So I thought that was like, okay, they're going to burn everything these people have, and
it's a nice to get these bad
guys. Yeah, I guess wood was cheap.
Yeah,
but all her possessions and the cast iron would survive. So, I guess they wouldn't be too bad off. So he made Lola and Waco, because he's from Texas.
Yeah, Johnny Waco Dean or something like that.
Yeah, Waco Johnny Dean. And so they go to the big hideout where Dutch Henry Brown and the other ones are there waiting. And the Dutch Henry Brown just takes the gun away from Waco, And was he showing a coward streak himself? Because he said he could get it back later.
Oh, I think Waco Johnny Dean had every intention of not only getting that gun back, but taking all the money from the bank robbery eventually. He has no loyalty to his buddies. It's all he's all for him.
Yeah, because he wouldn't have been out robbing early if he sticked with the plan.
Yeah.
So half the group or the majority of the group goes to find the stagecoach that's carrying the gold that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And Lola and Waco go to the bar in Tuscora.
Tuscora, yeah.
Yeah. And Lynn and Ice Spade show up. And Lola's playing the piano, and they try to make a case for that she was just a piano player and not a saloon girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess they don't run you out of town for playing piano.
That's it, man. We can't have any piano playing here.
Yeah. Maybe if you play like I do, you know, that you could get run out of town.
It's the women piano players we don't like.
Yeah. Yeah. So she actually warns Lynn. Lynn, right?
Yes.
Lynn. She warns Lynn about Waco's trickery using his left hand.
Yeah.
And that's when they said in the reviews that's when people really jumped on Jimmy Stewart when he brutally beat down Waco right there. And I thought that's pretty far into the movie to kind of, you know, really become interested in the character.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to figure him out before that. But does he kill Waco? I can't remember. He does.
Yeah.
He kills him, and then the bank robbery takes place across the street, and those guys are trying to get away, and shooting back and forth between the bank and the saloon, and Lola runs out to save a little child and gets shot in the arm, and that was one of their other interactions when he starts to tie a bandana on her arm before he takes off after his brother, who's probably the only one of the gang that's still alive.
Yeah.
And then they get back to the old hideout, and I wasn't sure if that hideout was the family ranch because it had the picture in it, or if it was
that's a good point. It didn't look like it was big enough to be a damn ranch. It was set up in the rocks.
Yeah, like a mine shack or something.
I just wondered whether or not the bad guy had a soft enough heart to keep a picture of his brother and his dad.
Right. After he shot him and has one of them chasing around like, if you see this guy, let me know, okay? He's trying to kill me.
Yeah, but and obviously the character, Dutch, wouldn't have a picture like that. There's just a gimmick so that Shelley knows what's going on, I think.
Right. Yeah. They had to get it in there somehow, I guess.
Yeah.
So the battle in the rocks was really interesting when Dutch Henry and Jimmy Stewart started fighting it out with Henry on the top and Lynn on the bottom. The way they were ricocheting the bullets into the rocks. And, instead of hitting them, you didn't have to hit them with a bullet if you could chip off granite and hit them with it.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty good. And I guess it came down to fire discipline, right?
Yeah.
Because the younger brother ran low on bullets.
Right.
And then Jimmy Stewart goes back and he's going to live happily ever after with Lola. And I thought, well, okay, so what happens to the buddy that's been following you around since before the Civil War? Does he make a ranch next door? Or?
Yeah, he'll probably stay around as the cook and the general, the right-hand flunky. It's a good question. I mean, when you really stand back and look at the movie, it's a fun story to watch, but it's full of these little gimmicks and inconsistencies, things that don't seem to fit. But I liked it.
I enjoyed it. I really, like I said, I hadn't watched it in a while, but when I got to sit down and watch it, that's what I really enjoyed it.
Look at all the stuff, John, that they got into 94 minutes. I mean, they got all the ingredients. They got the Western bad guy against the hero. They got the heroic sheriff you didn't want to mess with. You got the sidekick that goes wherever you go. He's loyal to the last minute. Right. You got Indians, you got cavalry. You got horse chases and then gun battles in the rocks. You got a bank robbery. How much more stuff can you get in this Western in 94 minutes? Oh, I forget. You got the dance hall girl.
You got the dance hall girl. You had a wagon chase. You didn't have a stagecoach chase, but you had a good wagon chase to take up for. Yeah, they really packed it in here. Hey, that's probably why it's so good. Let me look at my list and see if I missed anything off here. Yeah. So no, that's about. So you like this movie because it's just action packed more than a good solid Western story.
Yeah, I first of all, I'm a Jimmy Stewart fan, and I've seen a lot. Probably haven't seen all his movies. I think he made 80 movies. But when I look back at the list, I've seen most of them, and I've always liked him, and I've liked him in all of the different kinds of roles that he played, even as he got older, and he was still doing sort of westernish kinds of movies, like Liberty Valance, good example.
Right. Even as late as when The Shootist with John Wayne, when John Wayne did his last movie.
That's a movie within a movie. That scene between those two it constitutes a movie within a movie, and it's just perfect.
That is
unlike this movie that has stuff in it that you wonder why it's there and seems out of place. There's not a wasted frame. There's not a wasted note. There are two guys talking about something dead serious. Man, that's a beautiful sequence there. I love that.
Did you get a chance to take a look at Destry Rides Again?
No, I haven't done that yet.
Oh, okay. It's kind of that's a Jimmy Stewart movie, but it's a comedy, kind of comedy western.
The other thing I think is so interesting about Jimmy Stewart, but it's true of a lot of those actors. When World War II came around, those guys, some of them, went in for it. I mean, he was 33 years old. He enlists in the Air Corps as a private because he's got a private pilot's license. I think he's got a commercial pilot's license, and he's really too old to go into their training program. So since he's a Princeton grad and 33 years old, he's commissioned as a second lieutenant. And they give him all of this sort of entertain the troops kind of duty. And he says, no, man, I want to see some action. So he winds up flying B-47, no, B-24s, bombing missions over Europe for 2 years. I mean, a lot of those guys didn't come back.
Right, especially in the beginning. And he ended up, Jimmy Stewart ended up a general in the California Air National Guard, which is just as, I mean, it's so impressive. And that dastardly John Wayne decided not to go, Even Clark Gable flew bombing missions over Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think I'm a brave guy, but would I fly on a B-17 over Berlin if I didn't have to?
I'm not sure I could. No, not sure. I'd like to think that I would.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'd do it. Yeah, they're the real deal. That's why I've always respected, Jimmy Stewart and Clark Gable, and the ones that a lot of, just so many of them. I did was it Here to Eternity? From Here to Eternity?
Yes.
And I just mentioned, I looked up whether everybody was in the military, and how many of those actors, just like Tom Tyrone and stuff, went into the Navy and stuff. And I can't imagine how many didn't come back. How many people that would have been actors.
Yeah.
And so that's really brave, and it's just it's always been a pretty amazing thing to me.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And then the other thing about the movie, because I had read about this, I mean, separate from watching and appreciating the movie, the unique business deal that Jimmy Stewart's agent, Lou Wasserman, cut for him, because back then, Jimmy Stewart's standard fee was $200,000, which in today's money would be about $2 million.
Right.
And the budget for the movie couldn't put $200,000 on the star. So Lou Wasserman said, "I'll tell you what, we'll take half the profits, no fee. We'll just take half the profits. If the movie does well, we do well, you do well." And that's the first of its kind since silent movies. And Jimmy Stewart wound up making 600,000, which would be a little over 6 million in today's dollars. And it was sort of another nail in the coffin of the studio system, because once Lou Wasserman cut a deal like that and saw that kind of money for his client and himself, I mean, all of the big actors were cutting deals.
Yeah, I bet it was
and
hard
not
to go back.
signing multi-year contracts with studios anymore.
Right, hard to go back to $250 a week after that, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
So
significant.
and that's the way I guess they're all making 40 million now because of that,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever. It's good money if you can get it. Wish I knew how to act. I could
Yeah.
use. I would quit after one movie, you know. Like, when's that guy going to make another movie? He's not.
Yeah.
He's out spending his money somewhere.
Yeah. The only thing about that is once you get all that money, you learn how to spend more of it faster. So you
I guess
wind up
so.
in that other movie.
Yeah,
But
like,
he's something. And I've just been reading about his friendship with Henry Fonda. Apparently they were lifelong best friends, and I guess there's a whole book about their friendship, which I'm tempted to read. So
interesting. I still got to read The Third Face by Samuel Fuller. It's his
what is that?
It's the story of the director Sam Fuller, from when he was in the newspaper business to when he went in the military to becoming a director.
Huh.
And
I just made a note. I'll look it up.
yeah, it's really good. I'm about a third of the way through it, and I put it down and I got to get back and get on it. There's one more thing I wanted to bring up about this movie. The relationship between Slapstick, Hapstick, what is his name?
High Spade?
Yeah, High Spade.
Yeah.
High Spade and Limp. You remember the Cheyenne Social Club that had Henry
Yes.
Fonda in it, and
Yes.
maybe James Stewart, right?
Mm-hmm.
That who's the partner? And
Yeah,
they talk about do you know why I follow you everywhere you go? You know, like, and I don't remember what the resolution is, but they talk about that relationship, about, you know, why two cowboys hang out and are partners like that. At one part, because when Jimmy Stewart inherits the social club, there's a question of whether Henry Fonda is going to follow him down. And he's like, of course, you know, because I'm your partner and I'm going to go with you, you know. And so that kind of just a bond, you know, a straight bond of probably necessity, because it was probably a lot harder to survive by yourself.
Yeah.
Out in the West.
Yeah, you needed at least one person that you could count on no matter what.
You needed your Will Gear to your Robert Redford in Grizzly Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
wow.
That's probably true today, for that matter.
Yeah.
It's good to have one person you can count on no matter what.
Well, you know, they do say in that line that Jimmy Stewart says, "My father says if you have one friend, you're rich," which is, they said, was a play on It's a Wonderful Life. You know, I'm the richest man in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, well, man has friends.
That's right. Yeah.
Thought they threw that in there.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That was a exciting little talk about Winchester 73. We didn't even really talk about the guns that much. I did want to throw in there that I read about the Henry rifle, that it didn't have a wooden understock, and that it heated up when you used it. And it's like, why would they make a gun like that?
Yeah.
You know, apparently it had he said it doesn't kill fast enough to. One of the guys did. And apparently you had a tube loaded. It had some kind of slide tube where the bullets fit in, whereas the Winchester, you could just pop them in one at a time.
Right,
right.
right.
Have to completely reload. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting movie, and the fact that it is a film noir Western, and I think it's an important movie. And very good action and very good acting in it.
Yep. I
So,
enjoyed it. I also noticed that those one in 1,000 rifles
uh-huh.
at the time sold for $2,400 each.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money.
yeah. So they weren't they. No wonder the bad guy. No wonder Stephen McNally wanted that gun. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
because there's no way he was going to buy one until he robbed a bank.
Yeah. Till he gets the gold. I'm gonna rob that bank and buy a rifle.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
Well,
fun, John. Let's do some
yeah.
more.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Let's wrap this up, and then I want to talk to you just a minute after that. And so,
Okay.
yeah. So I had a great time, and I appreciate you coming on. And I think people will like this and get a lot out of this.
I
All
hope
right.
so.
Talk to you next time.
Okay.
Okay.
Adios.
Okay. Adios. I've been out west too long. Uh, so yeah, if you want to come on and do something every 6 or 8 weeks or something like that, we can
Sure.
do it. And I'm glad to have you. And we can put out two old guys talking about movies or something.
That's it. That's it.
And we'll see how they do. They do pretty good on YouTube when I put them up there. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
I
So
had to check. It's been a while since I've watched one. I'll check. How many views did you get on your best one?
oh god, I don't even know. It's only hundreds. It's not 161 or something like that. But
That's fine.
the website's kicking pretty good. I'm getting about 400 downloads a day on the
Oh, that's
audio
great.
part. Yeah. No money, but so
Are you thinking of doing any monetization at any point?
I was, and I started trying to put commercials in there, and then I thought, what the heck? This is too much trouble. I'm retired. I'm not trying to make money.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to have fun. So,
Making
yeah,
money's fun though.
it is fun. It is fun, but
But it's
it's
not
ag-
easy.
it's aggravating. I noticed that I put too many commercials in, and they dropped off a little bit, and I'm like,
Oh,
got to
yeah.
back up on these commercials here.
I'm
And
thinking there might be some good opportunities in merch.
well, I've got these ones. This is the bonsai one, by the way, the
Ah,
bonsai girl
yeah.
for the other website. But these shirts were printed locally, so they're a little better. But I sell all this on the I don't even know. I got the link on the site. You can get them, but the quality, T Public, the quality is not as good. But I was thinking about making a YouTube video that just talks about the merchandise, you know, and doing it just because sell a few shirts. I'm not above that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. So look, yeah, that was great today. So give me a call, in 6 or 8 weeks, whenever you're ready to do another one, and we'll get it
Yeah,
done.
I'd love to, and I'll think about some because I love these movies from my youth, from the
Yes.
50s. And I
Right.
love westerns, but not just westerns. I mean, there are so many good movies, and in my mind, that's sort of the golden age. The '60s gets real interesting, and the '70s, and then the '80s coming along, and
It's a different
there are
kind of
fewer and
thing.
fewer movies you want to watch.
Yeah. I watched
And today
some
there are
movies that
even
were
fewer.
yeah. I watched some movies that were supposed to be highly recommended from the 70s. I watched Clute with
Oh
Donald
yeah,
Sutherland and the Parallax View, and didn't care for them. I thought they were just slow paced, trying to bring the anxiety up, but it was like something needs to happen in these movies.
yeah. I know
Oh,
what you mean. I liked Clute though. I
yeah.
did like it,
Have you seen it
but
recently though?
no,
Yeah,
that's
I don't think
I, I probably need to revisit that.
it was shocking because of the stuff that Jane Fonda said, the way she talked and cursed and everything,
Yeah,
but it wouldn't be shocking now.
but
It's just like, yeah,
I've never understood Donald Sutherland as the leading man. That's one of the homeliest faces you can put on the movie screen, I think.
he is, but right up
I
to
just,
Kelly's heroes, though.
yeah.
He's not quite the leading man there, but he's the major character.
Have you have we done? Did we do Hard Times together?
No, I did that before.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I love
Charles
that
Bronson.
movie.
That's my favorite Bronson movie, and I love that movie.
We got Mr. Majestic too, though, that we haven't done.
Yeah,
So
I enjoyed the hell out of that movie too. Trying to think of the author, one of my favorite crime authors. He wrote oh damn it, the movie with John Travolta and shit, I can't
John
remember.
Travolta.
It's and Danny DeVito, and it's about the loan shark that comes to Hollywood, and
Oh, Get Shorty.
yeah, the same author.
Yeah.
Many of his stuff, like Jackie Brown, was one of his books that Tarantino made. All of those, all of the movies made on his books, I think, are pretty interesting. I think that's the second movie I saw James Soprano guy,
Gandolfini.
Gandolfini. You've seen Get Shorty, am I right?
Right,
No?
I've seen Get Shorty.
Okay.
Yes.
The first time I saw Gandolfini was in Tarantino wrote the script, True Romance. If you haven't seen
Wait a minute. Is that with Christian Slater?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a great movie.
It is a great movie, and that's got a great movie within a movie too, between Christopher Walken and man, my mind is so rough today.
Okay.
Oh, the guy from oh well, I'll think of it.
Walken.
But it's a fantastic movie. It's got, because Tarantino wrote it, it's just packed with funny, lively dialogue. And it's got these fantastic characters. Gary Oldman, remember that? He plays the drug dealer. He's a white guy,
Yeah.
just talks all black.
And then is it Dennis Hopper? That's
yes,
the dad?
Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken. Man, that's
yeah. When he's trying to he's going to torture him, and he knows he's going to break.
Yeah.
And he provokes him into killing him.
Yeah.
That's a great movie. So we got lots of choices. So know, and
I'll think of a few. I'll let you know, and we'll do it again.
All right, Rick. Thanks for doing this today, and I'll let you know when this comes out.
Great. Thanks, John.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.